words of my own. We're now between two parshiot. We've been shul a couple of days ago. We read Parshat Ki Tisa, and we'll be reading Vayakel Pekude this coming Shabbat. And both of those are appropriate for speaking about my father. Vayakel Pekude has the biggest construction project in the Torah, the construction of the Mishkan, or the tabernacle. And the Torah gives intricate instructions about what was supposed to be done. My father was very handy. There was a book that my parents used to, probably more my mother, used to read to us when we were little kids, called My Father Can Fix Anything. That was him. And in trying to teach us, he was always concerned about form, things like holding the hammer right, etc. He tried, in my case at least unsuccessfully, to pass the interest and handiness on to us. But his attitudes he did pass on. Sandra already mentioned one of these. One of his mottos was, if you want to do a job, do it right. And this was true in the many hours he spent helping us with various things. With college applications, with homeworks for school. He worked to get us to do all these things properly. He helped me or us to move many times during my life. Into college, multiple times, various grad schools, medical schools, postdocs, etc. I remember, well, still in 1994, I moved into an apartment in Brookline, Massachusetts, when I was going to be doing a postdoc. My parents came up after a few weeks to come and visit. My father came and he worked and worked and worked and worked, constructing shelves, setting up things, etc. And he was unwilling to settle for good enough. It had to be done right. I remember crying when my parents left after that visit, that somebody who was devoted, I saw somebody who was devoted so selflessly to doing things with excellence just for me, and I wasn't ever able to reach that level. Now moving backwards to Parshat Ki Tisa, I'm going to preface this. Sandra had mentioned his dedication already to the congregation on Torah in Bethesda, which was a small Orthodox congregation, where when they finally had a Rav, the Rav would give a Dvar Torah, and the Rav was often interrupted, and this was an accepted practice there because it was a small group. So Dad often interrupted. And the thing that happened, I didn't see this year after year, but he was never willing to accept the justice of Moshe Rabbeinu's not being able to enter Eretz Yisrael. So Moshe is my Hebrew name, and I think he identified with Moshe Rabbeinu for several reasons, including his sense of justice, his dedication to those who are dependent on him, and his anivut, or humility. So the parasha we just read had, in a sense, Moshe Rabbeinu's moments of highest triumph and greatest heroism. Both in the last Rashi on the Chumash talks about the pasuk Le'nei Kol Yisrael, in the eyes of all Israel, saying that refers to the shattering of luchot and tablets. And additionally, the self-sacrifice that in his arguing before Hashem, saying, Necheni nami sifrecha, if you don't answer my, if you don't forgive them as I'm asking you, blot me out from your sefer. And elsewhere, Moshe is described as being anav ma'od, very humble. But the point here is what he did for us was never about himself. He always wanted to help us financially, emotionally, any other way. Emotionally, I wasn't happy in medical school. I was there for 4 years, and when I wanted to switch courses in my life, he was willing to accept this, even though it wasn't his idea. And he wanted to be sure that I would be happy and that this could lead to his success. It was never about proving that he was right the first time around. During his final years, even when the ability to help out wasn't there. The desire always was. The first year after Lisa and I bought a house in Queens, and we're putting up a sukkah for the first time. He was there to help, but wasn't able to be as helpful as he would have been a few years before, and it must have been very frustrating for him. And he always wanted to know how he could help, and it was never about showing how good or knowledgeable he was. I often didn't really know how good he was. I was proud in my academic and skills and knowledge of things, and didn't think I needed very much help. A couple of years ago, Mom unearthed a tape recording of an interview I did for some high school history course, in which he spoke with a lot of detail about some historical events surrounding the end of World War II, Potsdam, Yalta, various other things. I hadn't really realized the breadth of his knowledge or appreciated it until it was too late. Lisa and Mom will remember how I broke down and cried there. He was, at that point, he was no longer able to talk for himself. He was too busy concentrating on helping us and making sure things turned out right to be concerned about showing what he knew. So I ask your forgiveness for not recognizing this while I still had the chance to appreciate it. His life story is in many ways a love story, not only about his children, whom he loved very much, but also about Mom, his wife, and his parents, his in-laws, his brother. With regard to Mom, there was never any doubt about his love or commitment for her. And even in his twilight years, Mom reported that on several occasions he asked her to marry him. And it was very bittersweet to hear, because obviously he still loved her even if he wasn't totally with it. Sandra mentioned already when he had vacations, he would often stay around to help his parents run their grocery store. Now, the story is not just about excellence, technical and moral. He also had a lighter side. I'm asking Mom's forgiveness about telling what was probably his favorite joke that she never wants to hear again. It was about a woman and her three dogs. So there were two women, and one had three dogs, and they were talking, and one asked the other woman, what are the dogs' names? So the other woman says, so there's Blackie and Whitey and Rubenstein. So the other woman says, how come? Why do they have these names? Well, I call this one Blackie because he's the blackest. And this one is Whitey because he's the whitest. And this one is Rubenstein because he's the pianist. After some point, while he was deteriorating, he couldn't say it anymore. But he still laughed when I told it. And then after a while, he couldn't understand it anymore. The last years were very difficult for him. It was really hard for us to tell what he understood. There were many people who helped him in his later years. His family, his friends, Yitzhak, the community. There's special thanks which are required for three people for their commitment and their vision in taking care of him. One of them couldn't be here. Her name was Ophelia. She was his caregiver for a few years from the Philippines, who left after several years to go home to her family just within the last month after devoting several years to him. Perhaps his passing now has something to do with her absence. Next, there's Sandra primarily, and also his family. Sandra was the clearest and most farsighted in terms of knowing what was best for him and for Mom, and insisting that it happened, and for giving the time and dedication that those of us who were several thousand miles away couldn't. And last, and most important, just to Mom, her dedication and her refusal to accept what others said had to be done or was necessary showed love, and I think really probably lengthened his life substantially and made his twilight years as pleasant as possible under difficult circumstances. She said it was the least that she could do, because he would have done the same for her, and we have no doubt that he would have done that. And she set an example for all of us. Dad, I'm going to miss you. May your memory be a blessing.
חזק וברוך על הדברים שיוצאים מן הלב.